Welcome to this explainer. Okay, let's dive right into the complex world of environmental terminology. We see these words literally everywhere on our morning coffee cups, our clothing, our shipping boxes. But today, we're going to uncover what it truly takes to make a product sustainable, cutting through all that marketing hype and getting straight into the nitty gritty reality of manufacturing. So let's start with a bit of a curveball. Imagine you just bought an eco friendly, compostable bamboo toothbrush. Feels like a great conscious choice, right? Well, what if that toothbrush was manufactured and shipped halfway across the globe to reach you? When you factor in all that transportation, its overall carbon footprint might actually be worse than a locally made plastic toothbrush. Crazy, right? It's a perfect example of why we have to look past the surface level to truly understand environmental impact. Before we go any further decoding modern jargon, it's kind of cool to know where it all started. The word eco actually comes from the ancient Greek word oikos, and that translates to house or environment. Historically, it was used to describe the interconnected living spaces of a community. It's a really great historical fact that grounds our whole conversation today. It reminds us that eco is fundamentally about our shared, interconnected home. Now, keeping that shared home in mind really helps us decode the buzzwords we hear every single day. People tend to use eco-friendly and sustainable like they mean the exact same thing, but they are actually very different approaches. Eco-friendly focuses on minimizing immediate harm to the planet, like simply swapping in biodegradable materials. But sustainability, that is a much heavier lift. It's a holistic, forward-looking system that demands a balance of the triple bottom line: people, profit, and the planet, ensuring long-term viability. And then there's the term green. This is the absolute broadest umbrella term in the entire environmental dictionary. Basically, it can refer to any initiative, product, or policy that has a positive or honestly just not a negative effect on the planet. But here's the catch. Because it's so broad and loosely defined, it unfortunately becomes the ultimate vehicle for deceptive marketing campaigns. Which brings us right into the trap of greenwashing. It's so common. As the research points out, greenwashing frequently happens when a company simply updates their packaging to literally be the color green. They slap on some nice images of leaves, maybe throw around words like simple or natural. It is incredibly easy for consumers to be duped by these surface-level design tweaks that make massive claims but have zero verifiable evidence to back them up. And the tactics companies use to do this are actually well documented. What's really interesting here are the specific strategies. First, there's green lighting, where a brand distracts you by heavily promoting one tiny green feature to hide terrible practices everywhere else. Then you've got green hushing. That's when they deliberately hide or underreport sustainability data just to dodge scrutiny. Green rinsing happens when a company keeps moving the goalposts on their missed environmental targets. And finally, green shifting, where companies basically try to shift the blame for environmental impact entirely onto us, the consumers. So, how do we actually get past all this greenwashing? Well, we need to zoom out. Let's step away from the consumer aisle and walk right onto the manufacturing floor to look at the machinery of sustainability. We're shifting our focus to how businesses and professionals accurately and scientifically measure their true environmental impact. And the absolute gold standard for that measurement is the Life Cycle Assessment, or LCA. It's a rigorous, cradle-to-grave analysis that professionals use, and it breaks down into four main phases. First, defining the goal and scope. Second, taking a life cycle inventory. This means literally tracking every single drop of water, watt of energy, and gram of raw material used. Third, the impact assessment, which translates all that raw data into real-world environmental impacts, like a carbon footprint. And fourth, interpretation, where businesses identify their biggest problem areas or hotspots. The absolutely crucial point here is that the insights gathered from an LCA directly fuel a process called eco-design. Eco-design means integrating environmental considerations right from the very start of a product's development journey. It gives businesses the power to intelligently minimize their footprints and plan for durability or end-of-life recycling long before the manufacturing lines even turn on. Let's look at a fascinating real-world example of this in action from the packaging and product design space: payment cards. This is where designers face some really complex trade-offs. For instance, metal cards require huge energy inputs to produce, but they offer incredible durability for long-term use. Wood cards? Well, they require extremely rigorous, responsible forestry sourcing. And surprisingly, if a card is only meant for a short-term use, like a temporary event pass, plastic might actually be the best choice. Why? Because of its lower production footprint and ease of short-term recyclability. It's all about context.
And that context highlights a massive divide in how sustainability is actually evaluated. As consumers, we naturally look for visible material signals. Does this look eco-friendly? Along with ease of use and affordability. But a business, they have to evaluate sustainability based on life cycle cost analysis, supply chain resilience, and scale. What looks good and green to a consumer on a shelf has to actually be scalable, durable, and economically viable for a business's operational reality.
Now, because of this stark disparity between marketing claims and operational reality, the legal landscape is shifting. Governments are implementing strict regulations. But we shouldn't view these as political mandates. Instead, think of them as highly practical guardrails. They act as rigorous checklists for businesses to ensure their eco-claims are bulletproof, helping them avoid massive legal and reputational risks down the line. To put into perspective just how strict these guardrails are getting, let's look at a hard data point: 60%. Under the Federal Trade Commission's Green Guides rule in the U.S., if recycling facilities aren't available to at least 60% of consumers in the specific communities where a product is sold, a company literally cannot just label it recyclable. They must strictly qualify that claim, making it crystal clear to the consumer that it might not actually be recyclable in their specific area. And whether we're talking about the FTC in the US or the European Union's Green Claims Directive, the core goals for compliance are essentially becoming universal. Businesses must substantiate any third-party certifications they use with hard, cold evidence. They have to prove that materials labeled compostable will actually break down safely and in a timely manner. The modern standard requires totally transparent, third-party verified data, leaning heavily on scientific product environmental footprints. We've covered a massive amount of ground today, moving from the ancient Greek roots of the word eco all the way through the rigorous demands of supply chain LCAs and international regulations. So I want to leave you, especially the business and packaging decision makers out there, with one final provocative question. Are you designing for a label, or are you designing for the life cycle? Because true sustainability requires deep, systemic shifts that go way beyond a green piece of cardboard. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and keep looking deeper.